Hi everyone, welcome back to Merchants of Ofir's surprise release. We're going to go through all these faction cards here, talk about some of the best ones, some of the ones that I think are pretty lacking. We're going to start off with monsters. So monsters in this expansion have a lot of support for Death Wish and Consume, and even spawning small units. So let's start off with like the Spectre package. Spectre package is focusing very much on Death Wish and Consume. Starting off with kind of the marquee card, Desert Banshee. So Desert Banshee starts off with an order to consume an allied unit, and you're probably going to use this to boost this unit, either to make sure that it's a dominance unit or that it lives, because this is a pretty decent engine. Think old cockatrice from way back in the Midwinter days. This is kind of that card. Gets boosted whenever you play Death Wish. Pretty solid engine, and it's going to work really well with other cards like Night Wraith. This is a Death Wish that spawns 2 rats, which are 1 strength units on death and on play. This card is a solid inclusion at the bottom end of any deck that cares about Death Wish. And there's an interesting card here where you have the Noon Wraith on Death Wish, spawns 2 rats on a random enemy row. But if you can protect it, or if your opponent like doesn't even care about removing it, it's pretty good, right? At first I thought this was on to play, and that's why I was saying it was crappy in the chat room. It's on Death Wish. So all of these things are working together. Then you have the new card, the Barghest. This card consumes on deploy, much like the Slaino Harpy, but also can consume, if you have dominance, an additional time. This is not that useful, but it makes sense that you have a lot of extra consumes, kind of for 2 reasons. First reason being, you are going to be spawning a lot of rats. There's a lot of cards that spawn rats, and if you're not running Glusty Warp, or it's not the round you want to play Glusty Warp, having extra consumes can actually save you on board space. But also, if you're playing so many Death Wishes, you want to be able to proc as many as you can. So having extra Death Wishes on all these cards, extra consume effects on all these cards, is pretty good. Then you got the Penitent. It's probably the best card that Monsters got for sure. This card has it all. 7 strength, 7 provision, 2 strength unit here with Thrive. It's a Spectre with Death Wish, so it does all the things that the Death Wish lovers want. So that's the scenario, and cards like Desert Banshee. Summon a random 7-cost unit from your deck on Death Wish. Let's get acclimated to the 7-cost units. So those 7-cost units are Werecat, which you would not want, Gale, which you wouldn't want, and Dragon Queen, which you could get away with, but you probably don't want. Definitely not Queen of the Night. And then you have the cards that you do want to put in your deck. You have the Beast, which is another new card for Monsters. We'll talk about it now. It's a 7 provision, 4 strength Spectre that is boosting itself if it's not the highest unit on the board every time it's not the highest unit on the board. So he's always making sure that he's getting your dominance working. So that's a good card to spit out because it's a strong onboard effect. You have the Manticore, which is obviously great, and you have Pugo, which is just 10 points, unconditional. So having the Manticore is probably the best. Because there's a lot of ways to manipulate Death Wish, although a few less, because Monsters did get a huge change to Death's Shadow. I'll get to that in a second. But the other thing I just want to talk about is the neutral 7s. So this allows you to get, this is actually a very interesting combo because it allows you to get 2 very interesting cards. I think that Lady of the Lake is a respectable choice, but really what you're looking for are the Dula Kamani and the Runewright. So if you play the Penitent to pull out the Dula or Runewright, you can then play the other one, because you only need to proc the deploy after the other one's on the board, and then you can get their ability. Now, we're not talking about the neutral cards, but this is some stuff right here. This is some fun stuff. If you actually spawn the Desert Treasure, you can spawn and play a random legendary unit from any faction. It is super random, memey stuff, but it seems like Monsters might actually be able to make this work the best. Outside of that, you have the Plague Maiden. This is the big card for Monsters. 7 strength Spectre for 12 provisions. On Death Wish spawns 7 rats on the row. So she takes up 8 spots if you proc that Death Wish right away. Sorry, 7 spots because you're consuming the unit. If you are triggering the Death Wish without killing the unit, as with the new Death Shadow ability, which is the old Whispering Hillock ability, or if you're playing this with Caranthir and just killing it because you want that ability, the Death Wish, to go off, it will take up a lot of spots. You can see why you'd want to have a lot of swarm mechanics You're looking for Yennefer, perhaps. You're looking for Glusty Warp. Should always be able to get huge value. And because of Erica's Queen no longer spawning whenever you consume something, you're less likely to roll-lock yourself. But you could roll-lock. Could end up roll-locking with this card. But I think the potential is there. It's pretty scary. And then you have the scenario, which cares about playing Death Wish units. We covered that in the last video, as well as the strategy, which also cares about Death Wish units. So tons of Death Wish love. Best card, Penitent. Worst card, Barghest. And I think if I had to rank them real quick, it would go something like Barghest, Noon Wraith, Desert Banshee, Night Wraith, Beast, Plague Maiden, Penitent. I think I would rank them like that. Let's quickly talk about Death Shadow, though. So Death Shadow is now different. It's no longer a 3-charge ability. It's only a single-use ability, and they got monsters got a provision buff of 2. Now you can put 16 provisions in your deck. Now you can destroy an allied monster unit and spawn and play a base copy of it. So what happened to Whispering Hillock? Because that's what that card did. Well, that card changed too. Whispering Hillock, a card that just has always changed, now plays a Death Wish unit from your deck. So it is a bodiless tutor, and it's expensive for that. When you look at its obvious comparison to Wisp's Tribute, but I'm only looking at special cards, so we won't see it here. You don't get the body, you don't get the benefit of playing 2 cards, but you do get to play a Death Wish unit. So there's that. So it is what it is. It's a tutor, so it's pretty good. But it seems like it's a highly costed tutor when you look at, well, I mean, I'll use Double Cross. No, it's good. It's fair. I'll take it back. It's fair. All right, Nilfgaard. Let's talk about Nilfgaard stuff in Merchants of Ofir. So Merchants of Ofir were it's a pretty interesting inclusion for Nilfgaard, because it's almost everything they want to do is kind of included in the set, but at the same time it isn't. So you have a card like Van Moorhelm Hunter, and the Van Moorhelms are the vampire aristocrats that came over from Ofir. So if you don't know Witcher lore, Unseen Elder, Detlaf, Regis, they're only from one tribe of 3 different tribes of vampires, and very little is known from the other 2 tribes of vampires. So it is realistic to believe that from across the sea would come another tribe of vampires, perhaps a more civilized tribe of vampires. So it appears that these are those vampires. And this is what they've brought to Nilfgaard. They seem to be down with Nilfgaard. Nilfgaard, for some reason, is down with them. And there you go. So you have the Van Moorhelm Hunter. It's a vampire aristocrat that gives bleeding on melee row, or locks a unit on the ranged row for 3 strength. It's pretty damn good. Also, the Thirsty Dame. This is showing off status Nilfgaard. So this is what Nilfgaard is building towards in this expansion. It seems very good. Whenever an enemy unit receives a status, boost self by 1. So this can be boosted multiple times in a turn, and it's just a pretty strong engine, and is also the focus of the scenario for Nilfgaard. Then Thirsty Dame is what comes out first. Thirsty Dame also a vampire, cares about bleeding, all that stuff. A lot of other stuff, cares about status effects, and also creates them, gets benefit from them, or hurts. So you have the Hunting Pack. This is a thinning unit that cares about your unit having statuses. You have Van Moorhelm's Cupbearer, which applies poison. It also has Assimilate, so it feels very much like Kurt from Syndicate. Could also have a Purify, so another Purify option for Nilfgaard. As well as you have the Van Moorhelm Servant. I don't know if this is a great card, but it likely can get you 6 or 7, and I don't know, I think it's kind of slow, but Nilfgaard did get hit in their 4 provision point units. And then finally, you kind of have the Pavko Gale of the set in Philip Van Moorhelm, because he is, just he's a guy who pings, and he pings more if there's statuses, so he's just a strong engine. You want to obviously boost this guy and protect him. And then you have Vincent Van Moorhelm. So the Moorhelms, these 2 Moorhelms are either together or are brothers, but they run the show. Vincent is an insane card. Think about old Menno Cohorn, destroy a spying unit. Well, Vincent can do that and so much more. For 11 provisions, this guy can destroy any unit with status, any enemy unit. So poison, spying, shield, vitality, you name it. A lock, You name it. It's gone. This card is a powerhouse card for Nilfgaard. And then, of course, the poison-based Masquerade Ball and the status-based Collar for this stratagem. If I had to rank these cards right now, I'd have to say that the worst cards are probably the Moorhelm Servant, followed by the Hunting Pack, because I think Nilfgaard just does thinning better already and doesn't need the provision break. And then I'd probably say Cupbearer, Thirsty Dame, Van Moorhelm Hunter, although I feel like these would probably occupy a tie. Philip's probably worse than this package. And then Vincent, obviously, at number 1. Vincent's just a super, super strong card. Very strong card, very worth it. Quite cheap, actually. 6 strength on the body. Very, very strong last say card. Just a ridiculously strong last say card. Be careful about Hyperthin Nilfgaard, because they're not going to fail. They're going to get this card, and they're going to beat you on last say. Seems good. So, like this card in Thirsty Dame and even Van Moorhelm Hunter, I think you just run them. There's a Nilfgaard deck that doesn't care about status Nilfgaard that you could just run. Well, maybe not Thirsty Dame, but definitely Vincent. Let's talk about Northern Realms as well. Northern Realms got a lot of siege-based stuff and machine-based stuff, more siege engine stuff. Almost every card is a siege engine in this expansion. But they also got a lot of support for the shield archetype, which probably needed about this much because these are some good cards that shield's got. And there's some crossovers. So first thing I want to talk about is the Warfare card. So we got to see a new Warfare card in Boiling Oil. This is like Alzur's Thunder, but better. Mainly because it's just strictly better. It purifies adjacent units, so it knocks off shields, knocks off defender, knocks off... Well, it's going to be hard to knock off defender because you probably have to target the defender. But it knocks off shield, vitality, and other good statuses. It's not a big deal, but it's better than Thunder. But what is a big deal is that John Natalis can pull it, meaning that he can tutor out a 5 ping, which is fantastic. So that alone means that this card is pretty good. It's hard to argue not running it when killing something at 5 is very legitimate, a very legitimate thing to have in your deck at any given time, control or not. So I like that card. I also wanted to talk about the shield archetype cards because they're pretty cool. The stratagem for Northern Realms is shield based, as well as these guys here. So we got we'll talk about the Immortal Cavalry first. These fine ladies spawn copies of themselves when they play themselves, and they both have shields, which is important because if you're playing something like a Dahlia, or if you're playing something like Reinforcements, you're getting a lot of units with shields, which means that King Ragnar is actually a legitimate card that you'd probably want to put in. And he wasn't that bad in the first place, but you actually want to start looking at the other shield cards that Northern Realms has. Additionally, you have the Immortals themselves. These guys are 6 strength and come in with a shield on, and whenever this unit loses its shield, it boosts itself and then gets another shield. Not bad. So obviously really weak to status Nilfgaard because you're running shields. So there is that to worry about. But it is very Skellige-esque, especially with the final card that I think is probably more of a shield card than a siege card. The War Elephant stomping in what? Want to see the boat that took this big boy over the ocean? The War Elephant, an animal I never thought I would see in Gwent, but I think that the Asian inspiration is really strong in this expansion, and I think they did a really cool job with this flavor. It is, the elephant's a very noble creature. I see the northern flavor. Damages adjacent units by 4 and boosts self by 4 for each unit damage. 12 provisions, 8 strength. This card is a bomb of a card. If you hit a shield, it's just money, or you hit like a 1 strength unit or something with armor on it. Either way, or you want to break the shield, but either way, you're playing this card for 16 points when it works. Does have order. So you need to play Inspired Zeal if you want this to happen right away, or have a way of giving Zeal, which Northern Realms has. But it is a little bit harder to proc than just any old deploy. But when you do get to use the Inspired Zeal, you're boosting it by 2 as well, or boosting it by 1. You're boosting it by 1 these days. Yeah, so it's a tidy 17-point card when you're playing it into just these guys, gals. I heard the voice line, even though they're wearing masks. I heard it. So just playing this card alone makes this card a 17-point play with Zeal. So that's pretty cool. And then you have the siege engine stuff. So you have the siege ladder, which is a new 4 provision point siege engine. I don't think it replaces ballista, and I don't think you take other good stuff out for it. But it does have a way of saving your archers and saving your trebuchets by moving them back onto the row they belong. And if it's crewed, and speaking of crew, this is a card that just makes every card with the word crew better, because it spawns 2 soldiers that you can immediately put it in the sandwich. So you get the boost as well, which is good if you're trying to protect, your Redanian Knight, what have you. The Carol Ballista is a new siege engine here for Northern Realms. 5 strength if crewed, gain 2 armor, so obviously works very well with the Immortal Cavalry. And it has a ping, which is pretty good. Hard to deal with. Siege engine is good for spawning the scenario stuff as well. Overall, fairly meh. And then finally, I didn't talk about the War Chariot. This card does a lot of cool stuff. Gives bleeding for 4 turns for 5, so 9 value at 7. Is a siege engine as well as being a machine, which doesn't matter too much. Isn't a soldier or a knight, which would be nice if we could use Mad Charge in a Warfare deck, but I don't really see a reason to. Can move, can bleed, and if it's crewed, does them both. If I had to rank these cards, I think, once again, Northern Realms didn't get the greatest cards, but I think that the cards that they did get really flesh out and improve the quality of the card pool in general for Northern Realms. So I think if I had to rank these cards, I'd probably say Siege Ladder, Carol Ballista, probably the worst cards. I think that I think War Chariot's okay, but it's probably next in this list. The Immortal Cavalry, I actually think are a fantastic card. I think is going to see a lot of play. I'm going to put Boiling Oil just around War Cavalry, I think, in ranking. War Elephant as well. I mean, honestly, I don't really think any of these cards are really explosive cards. Like when you compare it to Vincent, when you compare it to Penitent, I don't really think any of the Northern Realm cards are really bursting at the seams with potential, except for War Elephant. So I think I actually have to say that War Elephant, I'm going to say, has the largest potential to be the best card that they received. And nothing else is really close to it, but you need to play you need to basically invent the new deck for it. And I think that's why Northern Realms probably, if I had to rank all the factions, it's hard. I think out of the 3 I just reviewed, Northern Realms is the worst of the 3. And of the 6, I mean, I think that Skellige got some good stuff. Skellige got some really cool stuff. Syndicate might be also around Northern Realms if I had to break them off into thirds. But we'll see. Their siege is not super strong for how expensive it is. I think it could be a bit cheaper, but it is good. It is pretty good from a control standpoint. And the stratagem is legitimately very strong. Protecting engines is a big deal. Northern Realms is all about that greed. We're going to cover the other 3 factions in the other video. Thanks for watching this quick whirlwind review of the cards factionally that came in with Merchants of Ofir. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. But we're live, so don't go anywhere. What's going on? Quintus Cage, I see you, my man. How you doing? Matrix or Maxtress, what's going on? Bark, Z, GG. Oh, we're live. Good, you say we're live? No, I'm recording the footage. We're recording the footage, dudes. In fact, I should probably change my, maybe I just quickly change my stream title. So you know what to expect when you step in and see your boy McBee live after being gone for 2 weeks and not know if you're actually watching something recorded or not. We're here. We're here. All right. So now we're going to look at Skellige's card pack, Skellige's card pack, and Syndicate's card pack. So Syndicate I think Syndicate they got some cool cards, but I think that they got the weakest cards. Maybe? Let me just double check here. Street Urchins are okay. Payroll Specialist. I mean, it just doesn't, it looks like about as good as Crown Splitter Thug, which is not that great. Passiflora Peaches is probably pretty good. 5 strength, though, but probably pretty good. Bloody Good Friends is probably it's a card that cares more about the bigger cards, the bigger card like the crime and the crime in the scenario here. But this card's probably good. Bloody Good Friends, and I love this. I love the story of the card. Saul, Better Call Saul. This guy's good, but I mean he's like Bincy. You're just gonna remove it when you remove it. The good news is he's cheap. 7 provisions for this effect. So it's if protected, get this guy behind the defenders. So, you know. But I mean it's not necessarily better than Dire Mutated Hound. So it is what it is. It's probably good. And you have Ludovicious Brunnenbaum. I mean, I'm no Syndicate expert, but I just think this card isn't very good. I just don't think this card is very good. The Passiflora scenario is actually pretty good, I think, especially if you care about Horde or care about like getting a ton of money and you want to play a lot of spenders and you do want to get a lot of money and play a lot of fees. So I think that what Syndicate has been lacking is a good Horde archetype and a good like archetype that just wants to like rush out a ton of money. And the stratagem supports that. And this is just a cool card. I'll talk about the Collusion card is just amazing because it does everything at the same time. So it's interesting to build it. So you can play some Horde stuff that is in Tide Cloaks. You get Blind Eye. Saul is Tide Cloak Horde. If you play Bloody Good Friends, you get both gangs right away. It's easy to play Sugi Reuven if you even want to play that card. You get every gang is represented. Syndicate, but they got the worst cards for sure, right? They got bad cards. Syndicate's too strong a faction, I think, right? Skellige's cards are so cool. The Crow Messenger is gonna be crazy. I am sure someone's gonna bust this wide open today, but maybe tomorrow. But it's just like they're foglets, right? They're old foglets. They come out of the graveyard. Unless there's just not a lot of. I just feel like I'm not seeing it, but somebody definitely is seeing it. Crowclan Preacher is a new engine, just a new engine that is also involved in the scenario. The Druid is pretty good. Also, this card's gonna be dope with like Monster Skellige Arena if we ever played it. But